Whoa, I can't believe it's able to get all this accurate information this quickly. Wow. Okay, we're going from this to this. And I'm not talking about a simple summary. No. There's a lot more here. A clean and precise output telling us exactly what the Federal Reserve or any central bank is doing, thinking, and expecting. Hours of research turned into a single prompt. And I'll show you exactly this prompt in this video. Now, to understand how to use this, we need to understand that monetary policy, so what a central bank does, matters. Whether a central bank is looking to hike or cut is one of the biggest influence on a domestic currency valuation. The biggest and cleanest trends come from something called monetary policy divergence. And you will see where I'm going with this in a minute. But basically, this is where you have two central banks heading into the opposite direction. Bank A is hawkish and instead Bank B is dovish. This creates an interesting environment where funds flow from currency B to currency A to chase the higher yield. That creates a beautiful sustained trend that you can ride. When you find that mismatch in interest rate differentials, you find a trend. Now, if you follow us, you certainly know this dynamic very well. I've also done a video on this already. The problem is that finally it means you have to become a librarian, reading every single statement, every set of meeting minutes, every press conference where they use 50 words to say absolutely nothing. It's tedious, it's boring, though I have to say I love it. But at the end of the day, you might miss an important clue anyway after hours of research. You might spend 4 hours reading everything, and still you might end up not being sure if they're going to hike rates or order a pizza.
Good afternoon.
But something is changing here. We now have a tool that can read all of these documents, all of the press conferences, all of the comments in the time it takes you to blink. A tool that can understand nuance, context, and sentiment. A tool that with the right prompt, it will deliver all the information you need in 5 seconds. This is where ChatGPT becomes your personal macro research assistant. You just have to know how to ask. So here's the exact prompt. This is not about asking simple questions. This is about giving the AI a set of commands so precise, so well defined that you corner it into giving you institutional grade analysis. You can't just ask it, hey, is the Fed going to cut rates? You'll get a generic useless answer. You need to give it a role, a framework, a very specific task, a prompt that forces it into giving you a useful answer. So, get ready to screenshot this, because this is the master prompt. First, we give it an identity. You are an expert financial analysis specializing in monetary policy. We're priming it. We're not just talking to a generic chatbot anymore. We're giving it a persona. We're telling it to put its quant hat and stop being a generic chatbot.
That's my quant.
Your what?
My quantitative. Look at him.
Next, the task. Your task is to analyze the latest from central bank, communications, and determine its tone. We're giving it a specific task and a specific source. We specify latest communications because we want the most recent, up-to-date information. Now, we define the main objective. Classify the tone as hawkish, dovish, or neutral. That's great, but it's not enough because we can't just let it guess what those words mean. We must define them with extreme precision so that it's useful to what we need to know. So yeah, hawkish means the central bank is concerned about inflation, unlikely to raise rates. Dovish means they're worried about growth and more likely to ease. So we clearly define what hawkish and dovish means in this context for our purposes, and we're not just giving it basic definitions. That would probably just confuse the research. Instead, we clearly define our terms. We'll give you the context, concerned about inflation, worried about growth. This tells the AI what to look for and how to interpret what it's looking for. But it's not too much context to end up getting lost in the weeds. And to conclude, provide a confidence score from 0 to 1 and a 1-sentence justification for your classification. This is a tiny but important detail. It's a lie detector. It forces the AI to show its work. A 0.9 confidence score tells us that the language was clear. A 0.6 tells us that it was a bit mixed. And this is the whole prompt. Now hold on a second here, because if you miss the next part, you're gonna get caught in the wrong information. Here's the most important detail of all. You want to use a version of ChatGPT or any other AI tool that has web access. So you want to see this when you send it a prompt. That tells us that the AI is going around looking for the up-to-date information it needs, the statements, the transcripts, the data, anything to do with its analysis with recent information. ChatGPT 5 does this automatically. Grok 4 is also pretty good at this. You can see exactly it's thinking through the information we need. So the point is this: you want the AI to have access to the web, and you want to see that search confirmation going on. Okay, with all this said, let's now bring this to the next step, because theory is great, but let's see things fly. Let's run a real world scenario. The European Central Bank versus the Federal Reserve. First, we run a research to see what the European Central Bank is doing. We drop the prompt into ChatGPT, and we make sure the AI is searching the web. It's extremely important. Again, we need today's information. After literally 4 or 5 seconds, there you go. Now, here you can go wild if you want. You can ask it other questions like, what do you think the next move will be? What data is important to pay attention? What did Lagarde say that you think was important in a later press conference? Quote me every sentence you think is relevant. And you can go on and on. You can have a conversation, get all the information you want. And the master prompt will still be the source for the AI to understand what to do, how to do it, and how to deliver the information. That said, for the sake of this example, let's keep it simple. We can already see what we need in the first output. It's slightly hawkish, neutral to hawkish, with the ECB looking to keep rates steady. Now, we ran a research for the Federal Reserve. Same prompt, just different central bank specified. Look at this. You can see the forward guidance here is quite different. It's more dovish. Why? Because the Federal Reserve is signaling a rate cut at its upcoming interest rate decision. Now, it's not a perfect divergence, between the ECB and the Fed, but still, one is staying on hold and the other one is about to cut rates. And to be precise here, the Fed is not just looking to cut rates once. The context here calls for a sustained move lower in rates, with rate cuts likely at back-to-back meetings. Now, we've literally done, in just 20 seconds or less, what could have taken hours of manual research. Now, hold on a second, because right here we have the why. We have the fundamental bias. EURUSD is likely to trend higher. Now what? Do we go and buy EURUSD right away? No. You don't just slam trades because ChatGPT said hawkish or dovish. That's the why. It's a directional bias. The fundamental context gives you the direction in which the market is most likely going to trend to, but we still need the when. You need to know when is the right timing to enter in that direction. And that's done with technical analysis. Ideally, we want to see these two gears interlock, to make the whole thing work properly. The why, the fundamentals, gives us the direction. The when, the technicals, gives us the timing. So now it's time to pass to the technical aspect. We open the EURUSD chart and we see this. Notice that clean technical structure being breached and perfectly formatted out from support. It's a bullish signal from the chart. It's the market telling us that it's ready to pay attention to the fundamental context. So at this point, we have a trade. We have the macro telling us EURUSD should be higher, and we have the technicals telling us EURUSD is ready to move higher. Now we have a trade. Not just a pattern, but a full-formed evidence-based trade. And so we took that in the private network, and in this case, we also alerted it in a public Telegram channel. It's a calculated, technically and fundamentally backed idea, which is to a profitable trade. This is how fundamental analysis works. Now, with all this said, this tool is powerful, but like any professional tool, it has rules. Ignore them and it will not work. Rule number 1, never trade just the output. The AI analysis is your starting point, not your trigger. It's the why, not the when. Always wait for the chart, the price action, to confirm the macro view. Fundamentals tells you where the market is most likely going to trend to. Technical tells you when to jump on the trend. Rule number 2, the market is forward-looking. The edge here doesn't come from knowing about the rate cut on the day it happens. No, it comes from using this tool to detect the changing language that signals that the cut is coming weeks in advance. Because remember, markets move on expectations. No change in interest rates happened within this period on EURUSD, yet it went up. Why? Because the market was pricing in the Federal Reserve cut. It was already starting to factor that into the dollar days in advance. So don't fixate only on the rate change. On the day of the interest rate decision, focus on the forward guidance. That's what the edge is. Rule number 3. Divergence is a process, not an event. Ships don't turn on a dime. Divergences can take months to build. Use this method to build a medium to long-term trade thesis. Track the subtle changes over time and give time to the trade to work out. That said, with this approach, you've gone from a simple pattern spotter to an expert in monetary policy with your own macro informant assistant. But hey, word of caution here. Do not make the mistake of thinking this is all there is about it. ChatGPT does a lot of the heavy lifting, but it can't and does not take into account every aspect. Interest rates are not the only variable in fundamental analysis. You have to think about the risk sentiment too. I've talked about this over and over again in previous videos. So don't get too comfortable with this prompt. It's not all you need to be a fundamental analysis trader, It's useful to understand what central banks are doing, it's useful to analyze them, but it doesn't do everything. At least though, for now, with this prompt, you can always be on top of what central banks are doing and most of all, what they're going to do next, because that's what matters. And you don't need to sit there parsing every adjective from power speech to know it. ChatGPT does work. Hawkish, dovish, neutral, with a confidence score. Then you, the trader, decide how to plug that into the bigger narrative. That's how it works. So what we've done here in this video is unlock a massive piece of the puzzle in fundamental analysis. Now you can do your own research on monetary policy in seconds. So if you found this useful, let me know with a like and a comment down below.